As I think about what I've done in my life, I've basically, in many ways, been a change agent.
Hello, Insiders. This is Lori with the story. Just want to say a big thanks to our sponsors of the Inside Story Hunters podcast. Thank you, Tiffany of CNR Services, Quick Cuts Media, Michael Valletta, and all that you do for us, Wasco Masonry, and all those that have walked alongside us to help bring Inside Story Hunters podcast alive. Looking forward to meeting some of our future sponsors. Just thank you to all, and thanks to my team. Well, hello, Insiders. This is Lori with the story, getting ready to capture the amazing inside story of Joan Jerome-Conne. Take a look at my sweet little friend back here. And look behind me. Yeah, just a few books. That's Joan's collection, cooking. I mean, there's probably nothing this woman hasn't done. That's the amazing part about her story. As I walk around her house and take over the space so that the Inside Story Hunters can capture her story. But it's everywhere. Education, experience, life. Oh, and that's Jay, her cute hubby. And what we'll be doing is just learning so much about, wait for this, Lamaze. Can you imagine? In 1951, when it was invented or created by Dr. Lamaze, that Joan was part of the amazing team that helped bring this alive. Yes, the idea of birthing with methods without this, can you imagine? So I'm not going to steal her thunder. Just hang on, come along with me, and enjoy the ride. Well, hello, Insiders. This is Lori with a story, here today with Joan Jerome-Conne. Right? I got it right. I think it took me 10 times to get it right. Hyphenated. A woman of many words. Right. I call her Joan of Arc. So I don't want to steal your thunder, but I do want to just first say thank you for being here, right? And then having the opportunity to capture your story, meeting you just recently. I'm wearing a scarf because it's cold here in Lexington, Kentucky, and I'm inside the home of Joan and Jay Conne. Yes. But today, I'd just love for you to share how you've birthed many things, from people to cooking to all kinds of things. But really what inspired me and blew me away when I heard a part of your story was Lamaze. So would you help me unveil that powerful story? You've lived a few lives.
All right. First of all, thank you for inviting me to join you.
Oh, it's my honor.
And to share the story. I think for many women today, they are probably not aware of the history. And in fact, it took many women to change it, not just me, of course. But the history is that for many years, women were the midwives that delivered the babies. And then gradually physicians took over that responsibility. And it was the practice that women would be told that they would be able to rest, that they would sleep through their birth experience, and they would wake up and there would be this beautiful baby delivered to them. And in fact, what really happened starting in the 40s, 50s is women were provided with medications, including pain medications, sleep medications, and something that caused them to not remember anything that happened to them. So Demerol for pain, Nembutal to get them to sleep, and scopolamine, which made them not remember anything. And they would wake up, they would think, and they would be the baby. The only problem was the caretakers there were busy taking care of people who were totally out of control because they didn't understand what was happening to them. They didn't have any information or very little information about the birth experience. They weren't given any behaviors to use to help them deal with the experience. And so they might come out of the whole experience, might take them several days to recover, to be able to take care of their baby. The baby was often affected by all the medications.
I was just going to say, today we're worried about, whether we eat a piece of pizza when we're pregnant, right? The impact. Right. And we're talking about giving...
wine, all of that, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so... starting actually in the 60s, and even a little before that, there was a Dr. Reed, Grantley Dick Reed, I believe was his name. And so my first birth experience was using the Reed method. And that was an interesting experience. It didn't give me personally enough of the techniques to use to deal with it well. I went into labor right after during Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh my goodness! Which of your 3 daughters, by the way?
The oldest, Lisa, my very special daughter, because I was going to school at the time. I was a registered nurse already at the age of 20. I was a little young for that.
We're talking in the 60s, and
Yes.
you graduated from Boston University in 1966.
Well, but I graduated from Mount Auburn Hospital School of Nursing in 1962.
Wow.
I had actually been working in a hospital for a while, even as a teenager, in the medical records room, among other things, and as a cherry striper, we were called, a candy striper.
I was a candy striper.
Yes, we were candy stripers. And I went into nursing at the time. Back in those days, there were a lot of choices that were thought of as careers for women. You went into education. You became a secretary.
That's right.
You went into nursing. And
or a teacher.
Or a teacher, right. And so for my parents, who did not have a lot of money, I fortunately had scholarships because I did quite well in school. And so I went into a nursing program. It was right next to Harvard University and Mount Auburn Hospital School of Nursing. And I went through the program. I did quite well in the school. And as soon as I finished, I got a job and I went into Boston University. I started Boston University. And at that point, I met my future husband, who is not my husband Jay, my ex, who's also a wonderful guy, Bill Jerome. And Bill and I met at Boston University, and I pretty quickly got pregnant. And what I didn't realize is that was at the time that German measles. We had an epidemic of German measles, and so I was caring for students in the infirmary. Did not know I was pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, so I had a choice, and the choice that we made at that time was to continue with the pregnancy. But
the risks that we take for granted that we're not exposed to, how
Right.
well protected we are today in the present day.
Yes.
As a woman.
Yes.
And carrying a baby.
Right.
And think of the risk. Everything you just described
Right.
is not only is a risk to the baby and to the mom.
Right. Right. And in fact, we're much more knowledgeable. We've gained a lot of knowledge. We didn't have the knowledge then. And so, you can't fault people for learning what's happened. So
Yes.
what we discovered is the German measles that I got in pregnancy did affect my oldest daughter. She's wonderful. She's brilliant. She's a researcher in clinical applications of psychedelics, and particularly MDMA, and she's known for her work in that field.
Amazing.
She designs and monitors studies worldwide on that.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
But anyway, she's a super person. But I actually was at Boston University and went through the program. And in fact, the funny story is I was obviously very pregnant in a nursing program. Boston University was a pretty tough program. Nobody wanted to sit near me. There was an empty circle around me because they were afraid I was going to somehow pop this baby out on them. And I prepared by taking some classes, mainly reading. They did not have all the techniques that you needed that we learned from accouchement sans douleur. It was called Lamaze. In French, it meant painless childbirth, which it wasn't, and the name was a misnomer, but you learn techniques to deal with it, breathing techniques, focusing techniques, and knowledge, really getting immersed in learning really what's going to happen to you in labor and delivery. And so that I didn't have from my first one. So the first birth was, I had the Demerol. I don't know if I had Nembutal. I did not take scopolamine. I absolutely refused to. And I went into labor, cleaning up from Thanksgiving dinner. And right after, I delivered in the middle of the night. And I went, in those days, you were in the hospital for about 5 days.
Wow.
5 days. And you'll notice the pattern as you went along. That when 9 months later, I was pregnant with my second while also going to school.
Unbelievable, Joan.
And so I was in school. In fact, I was fitted for my graduation gown, and with my other daughter, Lisa, on my back, on a backpack. And they fitted me for a gown. I missed the graduation by a few hours. I went into labor that night of the graduation, and so I didn't have to attend my graduation. I found out later I graduated with honors. I didn't know that, but it was
Of course you did. Do you do anything ordinary?
I do lots of ordinary things.
Yeah, we're going to get to her cooking and everything else that she does at the level of and she knows Julia Childs. Wait till we get there. Okay.
Yep. Yes, we'll talk about Julia, part of my life there in Cambridge. But I actually gave birth to my second daughter, Tanya, who's a super person. She is an exercise physiologist by background and then went into a career in education. And she teaches high school students advanced sciences, anatomy, physiology. She developed a course in exercise physiology, her background, and in brain science.
And my goodness.
And she is intensely engaged as a teacher. She's really a super person. She's also a super athlete. So I gave birth to Tanya, and graduated the same day from Boston University. And at that point, we were still living on Beacon Hill, in a basement apartment on Beacon Hill, down a few steps into the basement apartment, and the back side of Beacon Hill, not the front fancy side. And I took care of my young ones, Lisa and Tanya, and then with Tanya is when I got into doing Lamaze. There was a group called Lamaze Childbirth Education, and I became one of the Lamaze coaches. And we were teaching, we were very busy. I might teach 2 or 3 classes or more a week. Mm-hmm. Plus, I was on call for coaching. I was the childbirth coach. They had names for us in those days. And so I would go out, and following that, I was very, very active as a Lamaze coach. Mm-hmm. Monitrice, they called us, a monitrice, a labor coach. And there was a whole team of us. The interesting thing was, when I was heading out to coach labors, I had to have something set up to care for my little ones. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, I had this wonderful French nanny. She didn't come to our house. We went to her place. And so I would zip out. I wasn't driving quite yet, so I'd head out in a cab, drop the kids off, and then head off to one of the hospitals. And one of the things that happened as a result of this is that we got exposure in the hospitals, many of them, where people started saying, we really want to do this. We want to do this prepared childbirth, family-centered childbirth, and family-centered maternity care. And so what we started doing was, how to describe this, educating the doctors on the experience. Some of them were very open to it. Some of them were not. I had doctors say to me... Surprise. I had doctors say to me, you're taking the spotlight off of me and you're putting it on the parents. And I said, yeah. Exactly. That's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We're teaching them what to prepare, how to prepare for it, what to ask for, how to make themselves more comfortable, and not to have to... Back in those days, you didn't have lots of choices of, well, I think I'll have this medication or that medication to sort of take the edge off. It was either you got knocked out or you did natural childbirth, which meant no medication at all. So I didn't have any medication for the second and the third childbirth that I had. None. It was called natural.
When you're walking alongside of the women, right, and you're teaching them and educating them, providing that emotional support, take me through that experience, what it would be like if I was part of your class.
Well, first of all, it might be a group of 18 or 20 couples. Some of them experienced, some of them brand new and sort of nervous. Getting them to, it's like a basics education course in what's going to be happening to you as your body changes and as you get closer to labor and delivery, and what you can do to make that experience a positive experience. Learning breathing techniques and effleurage, rubbing the abdomen. I had couples where they were musicians and they would play their classical music and massage in rhythm with the contractions. What happened when you had these contractions, and then if you needed some medication, definitely what the choices were. And as they developed new techniques to deal with it, there were local anesthesia techniques that were developed. Particularly the epidural became a very important tool and helped a lot. It could sometimes slow down the labor, but sometimes it was important.
But it was just being created then.
Yes, it was.
Now you walk into a hospital and you're going to have, it's
right.
a given.
Yes,
right?
we were just creating that. We had things called pudendal blocks. There were a variety of things that they were trying, and I was at the big hospitals in Boston. I was at Beth Israel Hospital was doing a lot of pioneering work on that. They were very into looking at these new techniques and having fathers be in the labor room and even the delivery room. Fathers were not allowed.
I was just going to say, elaborate on that. When did that start? Because it wasn't always acceptable or allowed,
That's right. Right when we were there, it was 66, 67, pushing at that point. I had some of the first hospitals where fathers were allowed into labor and delivery. Some of the outreach community hospitals, some of the suburbs in Boston, some of St. Margaret's and St. Elizabeth's, and there was one Beverly Hospital. I mean, there were a whole bunch of different community hospitals that we would go out to, and that was the first experience. It was also the day where people would threaten to chain themselves to the hospital bed.
What?
Chain themselves to the hospital. Father would say, I'm going to chain myself to the hospital bed, and you're going to have me here with her.
Wow.
So I could be in that delivery. And we would negotiate it out so that there would be some way to take care of it.
I can't imagine having to fight for the right for the birth of your child, right? To be present.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It was definitely we were change agents. As I think about what I've done in my life, I've basically, in many ways, been a change agent.
Oh, even still now?
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even talk about the present day. I mean, and I'm just going to go ahead and say, by the way, you're 37 years old, right? And you've already given me permission, so
Yes.
I'm going to let the world know that this woman sitting next to me is 80 years old and still changing the world every day.
Yeah.
And tell us what you're doing presently, not to steal the thunder of that incredible story. I want us to come back to it.
Well, I work as a call center agent for a very large health insurance company. It's through a company that consults to them, and I help members who have their prescription drug plan and other plans with information about their prescriptions, how to get their prescriptions, what do they need, about the orders, where are their orders, are they missing. I become sort of like an ombudsman in educating them on what their choices are and how they might actually, talk with their doctor but I'm not supposed to clinically advise them. But I use my clinical expertise because
you have 60 years of experience to bring.
Well, yes, what I didn't bring up was what I became after I did all this coaching was I had a director of a program approach me. Mind you, I had my baccalaureate degree. I had my nursing degree. I was a registered nurse. And they started a program called the Macy Program. And the Macy Program was to educate nurses in advanced practice for becoming nurse practitioners for the future of the healthcare system, right? That's the national healthcare system. So I was selected at a very last minute, I had to quickly take the graduate record exams and all that and get into this program, which was Boston College Graduate School and Harvard Medical School combined. It was the Macy Program. There were 4 of us in my class, 4.
Only
and at that
4.
point, I had 3 children in actually 3 different schools, well, 2 different schools. And I had to go to classes at both Boston College Graduate School and at Harvard in the medical school, and over at, it was Brigham. It was women's it was a women's hospital at that point. It wasn't quite Brigham and Women's Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you, at some point, you stepped into a leadership role. You didn't have enough on your plate already, right? So
Right.
how did that blossom, your career, with all of the responsibilities? I mean, tell me, what drove you? I mean, how did you wake up every morning and carry so much responsibility and then balance all of that?
You know, it's interesting. I think we as women don't always think about what drives us and what motivates us and why do we go and do this. And I think, you know, it was done. It's part of my nature. It's part of my nature.
Your superpower. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if it's quite a superpower,
It
but
is.
I do even now every day for work. And by the way, my work days have been just 8 hours a day, but
Just 8.
well, actually for about 17 weeks, we had the big open enrollment period for Medicare, and then all the changes that happen at the end of the year, and then for the new members who have their insurance at the beginning of the year. So we were mandatory 10 hours a day. So that was 5 days a week, mandatory 10 hours a day. So I did that with 2 breaks. Well, actually at the end they had a third break. It was a 10-minute break. But 2 15-minute breaks.
Okay, so then when you finish the 10-hour shift, then
Yeah.
you're teaching classes to people like me, which I have a book here, and behind us is nothing of what you can see. The amount of books that Joan has in her home, cooking books, but I learned how to cook risotto. It was so delicious, but I didn't make it. She did.
We did it together.
Oh, but
We did it
still,
together.
10 hours, and then you're ready to go, still.
Yep.
And then I shouldn't keep emphasizing your age, but you just have a few years on me. And I sit here and think, I need a nap by the time we're just finished with a 3-hour visit, right?
Well, I'm pretty good at I can take a power nap very quickly. My husband will tell you I'll be there, and then all of a sudden I don't have any in between speeds.
Okay.
I go,
All or nothing.
or I can take a 15-20 minute nap, wake up, and I'm running again.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. So you were talking, I jumped around with the cooking.
That's
and,
okay. So, I went into the Macy program, and that was an intense 2-year program, 4 of us in the class. So you can't go and sort of hide, in the back of the classroom and say, well, I'll just sort of sit in. No, these graduate classes, you participated 100% for every class.
Where did you find time to study and prepare homework?
Well, I learned to manage on a little sleep. For finishing the program, you had to write a thesis. And that thesis turned out to be using my experience, working with parents in early parenthood. And it was looking at what are the issues that new parents face, developing their relationship with the baby, not just the mother, but the mother and the father. So were a whole bunch of different behaviors that I had seen. And so I wrote a thesis on that, using some of the principles that could be applied at the time. It turned out to be an 800-page thesis.
Oh my
because of all the
God,
interviews.
Joan.
The interview you and I are doing, well, I not recorded like this, but recorded on a tape recorder, and then everything typed up to document what we had learned.
And it wasn't computers and laptops.
No,
You
it-
couldn't speak into it, right? You were
Right.
typing or handwriting your notes and papers.
Yes, and a lot of that, my mother, my wonderful mother, who's no longer with us, of course, she actually typed it. And we're talking about you had to have 6 copies. And if you made an error, you had to go and fix each of the 6 copies, erase, clean it up. And there was no guarantee you didn't make a different or a new mistake. So fortunately, I learned very quickly I'm a very good typist. I type very
Absolutely.
fast.
That's it.
Still comes in handy. I work on a computer every day.
I mean, and technology.
Yeah.
Let's jump into a role that you had in between this journey that connects to technology.
Yes.
This is something
Yes.
that you're very savvy with today.
Yeah.
So, but talk about that.
Well, that's an interesting thing. That really came about in a major part because of Jay, my husband. And I actually was involved at in my graduate program with an application at Harvard Community Health Plan. It was developed by a team at Massachusetts General Hospital, and it used a language developed for health professionals called MUMPS. MUMPS, trying to remember, multi-user, the acronym stood for having medical professionals able to use this language, this command language, and they built the first computer application for medical professionals to use in medical practices, a medical record. It was the first ambulatory computerized medical record system. So,
oh my God,
so
amazing.
We got involved in that, and we started a company, and with no business background, zero business background. We're talking, medical practice, medical experience, clinical experience. We started this company called MedRx, and it was computerized medical practice, medical records, and business, and it ran the medical office. And we had quite a few clients. I learned a lot about the business world. The funny story about that is that at one point we were asked if we had something called what I thought was Arizona. What was it? Arizona Mission Insurance. I thought it was Arizona Mission. And I thought, well, what do we need? I don't think we're going to go to any Arizona missions. Well, it turned out it was Errors and Omissions Insurance.
Oh my
That's
God!
how naive I was. That's how naive I was. I really.
It's not funny to laugh at you, but just it's something I could.
Yeah, I knew virtually nothing about the business world. We chose a partner who was maybe not the best partner, and so after several years and practices, we had to get rid of the partner who was really not a good person at all. We had to get rid of the business, and I made sure that all of our customers were taken care of. And as a result of that, my husband was working at the time, Jay was working at Digital Equipment Corporation, which doesn't exist anymore. But when I looked into it and they found me and they said, oh, medical person knows something about computers. So what happened was I was interviewed at Digital Equipment Corporation, and they had a group that was looking for a person with medical savvy. They had a whole healthcare marketing group, and what they had done was, that company doesn't exist anymore, so I can talk about it. There were 137,000 employees when I joined.
Oh my!
It was the world's second largest computer company at that time, besides IBM. And we had an application that was designed and through coordination consulting with the largest medical facilities in the country at the time. So I they hired me on the spot, took me in, and I became the responsible for product and marketing management for DECRAD, which was their radiology information management system, with virtually, just a touch of experience in imaging and radiology. I became an expert in it.
Why did they choose you? Why do you believe, or what specifically do you think created the opportunity?
Well, the opportunity was I was open to doing that with them. I had the medical background. They would test things on me. The engineers would build these things, and of course 95% of what they built would interest an engineer, but not a medical professional. I wanted to, I don't care about the succession number and these other things. I just want to find where's the clinical information I'm looking for. Where's the SOAP note? Where's, that sort of thing. So, and I worked there for 7-8 years I was there, and I was on planes averaging 3 to 5 days a week. I would get in one city with kids. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Jay played an important role helping out in those days, but and the kids were already getting older at that point. But you name the major medical center, I've probably been there.
Tell me a time that you can remember sitting and reflecting. You're by yourself, if you ever had downtime, and you thought, I can't believe I'm doing this with my life. And this is just, mind-boggling. A moment where you just really took in the reality of how much you've accomplished. I'm sure you've had times where you've reflected and checked in with yourself. At least I pray you have. So, when would that have been?
Sure. Every once in a while I'll stop and think about what it is that, consumer directed healthcare today. I mean, everybody goes and they read about, they go and they look at articles and they question their doctor. That wasn't there when I think what we did with family-centered maternity care and the start of Lamaze and Reed was we changed the whole climate of what was seen as the role of the consumer, the healthcare consumer in their own healthcare. I know that was a major role that we played. In terms of what we did with computers, there isn't a practice out there today that isn't using some sort of technology and computer for,
And you were part of that trailblazing,
yes.
setting that foundation.
Yes.
I mean, I hope the insiders are really listening and hearing that I'm sitting next to a woman who was a part of when things didn't exist, that we can't even operate if internet goes down.
Right.
So it's just overwhelming to me.
And I was sort of there at the beginning of that too, the ARPANET it was called, and that was, so let me think about when was that, because I started with digital, it was, I want to say 87, 88, 89. Yeah, we were just beginning with that then, and what is taken for granted today, we were just beginning to develop. Texting, we had a system that used a similar sort of technology, but it was just for digital employees worldwide. I might be consulting to a medical group in Australia, which I was, and I'd be doing it through the night because that's the only time we could communicate at that time.
And on a telephone?
Actually, online, on the computer.
Okay.
We'd be computing, we'd be email, what was an internal, was before there was the email that folks could use outside. I don't think email existed yet then. We were starting to develop that.
Amazing.
So I was part of that too, yeah.
So, we have a few more minutes, and this is the part where I always ask, and I say, may you live to be 250 years old, okay? We need you here in this world, and thank you for being not only a life changer, a life saver, and I know you like to say you're a change agent, but you're so much more than that. Thank you for being so brave and working so hard. But how do you want to be remembered? What's your footprint? How are you leaving this world and wish to be remembered? You've influenced so much in your life. You constantly use your daily day to be purposeful. What should we know?
Wow. I haven't reflected on that very much. I still think of myself as I'm doing my Pilates on a reformer. I want to get more active again, even though I have the usual things that older people have, which I don't usually complain about. I continue to still use my expertise to help people. I tell them that every day, and I get a lot of great feedback on that. I have a wonderful family. I'm very fortunate. I have 3 great daughters, a wonderful husband, and a great ex-husband too. And we've just, and each of them is contributing in many ways to the world. So,
do you know what you've just done, though? When I asked you to reflect about yourself, you continued to honor your family, your husband, your children, and to recognize others. I just want to take a minute and say thank you for being such an important part of this world.
Okay, well, thank you.
I'm so grateful. The fact that I had an opportunity to meet you and sit with you and have you tell a story and then teach me a cooking class, and we don't have time today, but just take a minute and talk about Julia Childs and how you know her.
It's Julia Child.
Julia. Oh, I always add an S
at the end of it. Julia Child, who is an amazing woman, and she is the reason today that we have so many options out there for cuisines and for cooking and for enjoying really getting out there and not being afraid to just explore and try different things to cook. rarely cook the same thing. Few of Julia's recipes I might. And in fact, I have Julia's book right here.
Yes, let me lift it up. Look, insiders, I hope you're watching.
That is my book, held together with duct tape. And I have to be careful opening it, but if you open it, you'll find notes on some of the pages. You can see them spotted with the foods that I cooked, and there are dates on some of them. And, so her French, she wrote Mastering the Art of French Cooking, and she was an American woman who is quite famous because she also was a trailblazer even during World War II, where she was... Yeah, she was with the USS, but she was an amazing woman. She was also, by the way, 6'3", and you can guess I am nowhere near 6'3". I never have been. And we would trade recipes.
Tiny but mighty.
Yes, we would trade recipes at Savonur Supermarket, which was where her butcher was. And if you go back, you can watch Julia even today on. YouTube. You can pull up YouTube. The original Julia's are in there, and she'll talk about Jack. Well, we would meet, and we each had a meat locker. Julia lived nearby, right off of Kirkland Street, and I lived nearby, just a street down in Somerville. And we would trade recipes and exchange ideas. And even when she was 92, we would run into each other at the Wine and Cheese Cask and trade recipes there. And even then, she never lost her focus of that, and she has inspired many people today. It's a whole industry, actually, today, and that's why I have a whole library of great cookbooks and a house full of still of cooking gear. And by the way, I used my cooking expertise for 1 year. My job was cooking it. Well, once I stopped retiring, I decided retiring is not for me, and so I took a job 1 year as for the Christmas season, cooking at the Williams Sonoma, and it's called Williams Sonoma, and so the local Williams Sonoma had me be the chef, and my job was to create smells that would attract people to come into the store. And I actually taught a lot of people. So what I did in that, and my 2 years working at Macy's in the housewares department, which is where I taught people. I inspired people to cook and got them to buy some of the cookware. That was my job there. So
Amazing.
I did that for 2 years.
If you don't mind, I want to read something that I did a little homework on you, and I thought it really just describes you well. A quote where it says, "Make a list of things that make you happy. Make a list of things you do every day. Compare the list and adjust accordingly." The question is, how many lists do you have, Joan? Because there are so many things you do every day. So just
It's true.
a reminder,
Yeah.
life is meant to be lived.
Absolutely.
How would you like to close our visit today?
Well, you will come and join me for dinner, and I'll teach you another technique for how to cook something simple besides risotto.
Well, insiders, lucky me. It's bon appetit. But I think you can say it much prettier than I can, please.
Bon appetit!
Thank you. And thank you for being here. Thank you for being with us, Joan.
You're welcome.
It's been amazing to have time with you.
Oh, thank you.